Hi.
Hi, nice to meet you. So, looks like we're starting to get other people showing up. Good to see. Hi, Alyssa. Hey, hey, Aloha. Hey, Akui. I can't do this without thinking of the romper room, which I guess you guys never saw. Like I see Billy, and does anyone remember that? Nobody remembers it. Gwen, do you remember romper room?
No, I think I'm too old for romper room.
The woman had, I don't remember what she called it, the magic circle or whatever, and she would peer through it and say, I see Billy, and but I don't know how in the days of TV she could really see anybody, but she said she did. Anyway, it seems like people are showing up here. Alyssa, you got your video off now, I guess, but is your audio on?
Oh, 1 second. Okay.
All right, you know, you can keep it on or off. It is a little easier when people put their video on, just so I know what's going on, but you know, I can understand if you don't want video on you. So hi, Kira. Hi, Akui. I think I already said hi to you, Akui, but I'm saying hi again. Hi, Aloha. How are you doing? I think your audio is off.
Oh, good. I'm good.
So, Kira, you're muted. Let me unmute you.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I can't see you, but you want to keep your audio off for now? I mean, your video?
Yeah, for now. I'm going to try to figure it out. I don't know why I've been having problems with it today.
That's all right. I don't know that you really need it for what we're going to be doing.
Okay.
So we could start in a couple minutes. Let's just see if everybody else shows up. Who else shows up? So, okay, here's Elizabeth. So, you guys, am I giving you advance notice with enough time? Do you need more reminder? Or, I mean, it's just pretty much at class time on Mondays. Let me see. Let me check to see if I change that at all. I don't want to say it's every Monday and then it's turns out that it's different on some Mondays, because I think actually next week we'll do Wednesday. Let me see. So next week
Get a card or something, right?
we have
Shit.
we have it scheduled for April 6th. So what is that?
It's Monday.
It's a Monday? Okay. All right. So it looks like it's time to begin. How you doing, George? Can you hear me? Everything good?
Good, I can hear you.
Hi. Elizabeth, you there? Can you hear me? Oh, wait, let me unmute you. I don't know why some people are muted on my side and some are not. Elizabeth, you may need to unmute yourself because I'm hitting the, oh, there you go.
Sorry, no, I was looking for my laptop charger.
Okay.
I'm here.
All right. Well, oh, it looks like Lauren's in too. How you doing, Lauren?
Good. Or does this work? Oh, great.
Okay. All right. So let's see. I guess I'm just trying to think of if I need to announce anything before I turn this over to Gwen, who's with us to go over with us about how to. She's a researcher at the librarian. What's your title again at the library, Gwen?
I'm a government documents librarian.
Okay.
And I'm also an adjunct faculty member in the Library and Information Science program. So I teach graduate students about how to use government information resources.
Okay, great. Hi, Liam. Just signed on. So I'm about to turn things over to Gwen so that she can kind of run through with you guys how to basically use resources like at the library. And hi, Sophia. How you can use resources at the library and elsewhere for the research to kind of provide a factual foundation for your reporting. But I guess I would just mention, we'll talk about this as we get into the lesson plan, but basically what we're doing is Gwen's going to go over with you some of the reporting that you've already done, and we'll talk about how you can fill in holes and how you can have a more factual basis for your stories. But also, this is a way of setting up for the interview that we'll do through Zoom next week. And for that, I want to give you guys two choices, but I need feedback from you guys to let me know about one of those choices. So I have told the Hawaii Innocence Project that we are interested in interviewing them. Gwen and I were talking about this, and we were thinking that maybe there's 3 different ideas at least for what you can ask them questions about and how you could carve a story out of this. I would like you guys to see if you can find at least one other source to interview in addition to Ken Lawson, who's the co-director of the Hawaii Innocence Project. But the 3 that Gwen and I had in mind for you to do as topics for your story would be, one would be, Gwen had suggested the problems with the public defender system, and also issues with rape kits on Hawaii, and the way the government and law enforcement and the judicial system is dealing with that. Maybe she can elaborate a little bit about that. But third would be that if you go to the Hawaii Innocence Project website, you'll see, let me see if I can share my screen and just pull this up right now, but you'll see that they have a list of people who they're trying to defend or investigate to see if, that they believe have been incorrectly incarcerated. So let me pull them up. And Lauren works with them. So Lauren, did I characterize that correctly, the cases that they're focused on?
Yeah, it's that's right. People apply and they kind of accept applications based on if they think they'll be able to help them. And it's only people who are currently incarcerated. Right.
So can you guys see my screen, my webpage for the Hawaii Innocence Project? You guys can see it? Okay, yeah. So if you look under innocence cases, you can see these folks here. So what I'm suggesting is you guys can interview Ken Lawson about the Hawaii Innocence Project, or we actually have another option for you, which is I can just confirm with Andrea Freeman, who's a constitutional law professor here at UH in the law school, and there are a couple of stories there. So again, for Innocence Project, it would be public defenders, rape kits, or the innocence cases that they're focused on. For Andrea Freeman, who's the constitutional law professor, I would recommend thinking about either the announcement made by the U.S. Attorney General William Barr that they're thinking of suspending constitutional rights because of the coronavirus. So that means that they can keep people incarcerated or they can lock people up. I mean, there's been some reporting about what that would mean, what constitutional rights we're talking about. and why they'd be doing it. And it wasn't really a public announcement. It was some reporting that brought this to light. So you can find stories about it in Politico. And if I haven't already linked to those on our kind of shared Google Doc, I'll go ahead and do that. But anyway, or the other option with interviewing Andrea Freeman would be to do this Judge Dannenberg, who is a state judge, a Hawaii judge, who actually used to teach in the UH Law School and wrote a scathing letter to the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, John Roberts, basically saying that the court has gone off the rails and that this is the worst Supreme Court in a century because of the way that it's leaned into sort of the Republican Party of today and become a political and partisan instrument and done so at the cost of basic constitutional rights. And so the letter is a letter from Judge Dannenberg of resignation. And I guess I'm now proud to say I'm Facebook friends with Judge Dannenberg, but I couldn't get him to be an interview subject. So instead, you can ask Andrea Freeman about him. But you guys got it all for the two choices? So I guess the upshot of that is I just need to know, I guess within the next 24 hours, if you want me to tell Andrea Freeman to please be available on Monday, and then I'll just confirm that we'll be able to do that. And we would do it as like a Zoom breakout room for those who wish to do. I mean, I'd kind of urge all of you guys to at least sit in and listen to the Hawaii Innocence Project interviews, but you can also do Andrea Freeman if you want to go that way. Does anyone have any questions about that? Was that clear? I can follow up maybe with an email just writing that out, but it's like I said, you got the choice of, I think it's Kenneth Lawson, right, Lauren? So you got the choice of either Kenneth Lawson with the Hawaii Innocence Project or Andrea Freeman. And if it's going to be Andrea, please let me know within the next 24 hours by email that you want to do that. Okay.
Sorry, and Dr. G, we'll be having a Zoom with them where we all ask them questions, sort of like we're doing now.
Do you guys understand why I'm doing that? It's so that I know reporting is hard right now, and we never did get to do a court story. So my thinking was, let's do a Zoom session together. This way you guys can get at least one interview in the can for your next story. And if you can find a second source, I think it's really important to try. If not, maybe explain what you did about that in your reflection. But I'm not sure how hard or easy it is to reach people at this point. I mean, you're talking about doing it by phone probably, or by video chat for a second interview. But in any case, at least you'd have a single source, which is not ideal, but you'd have a single source story because of the Zoom session next week. Is that clear to everybody? So,
Yeah.
and then that'll give us, and then while you guys are doing this, I would just say, please continue to, it didn't look like very many people have gone online with the shared doc I created for the COVID-19 coverage thus far, but I've been adding to it. And so please start using that and start brainstorming together on that Google Doc, because if you're not already working on your own kind of idea for a coronavirus story, if you're doing one that's more neighborhood oriented, you'll want to be doing that for late April going through to the end of the semester. So, I mean, again, I think it's the biggest story of our lives, me included, and I'm 50 and a lot of you guys are under 25, but it's the biggest story of our lives for me included. And so I think it would be criminally negligent for me to not really not only give you guys the opportunity, but kind of encourage you and help you in any way I can to be a part of this. Because I think you'll be looking back years in the future at the coverage that you did about the coronavirus at the time. I still bring up the coverage that I did on Katrina for the Boston Globe and everything all the time myself. So, it was really important to me. So I think without further ado, and I'm sorry for such a long preamble, Gwen, but you know, if nobody, does anyone have any questions for me? No? I'm getting some kind of an indicator here. Let me see what this is. Oh, it's a chat. So, okay, I'm not seeing that showing up. But anyway, if nobody has any questions, did somebody chat a question maybe?
No, I chatted a link just to prepare.
Okay. I'm trying to bring up my chats, Gwen, and I've got the video up and my website up, but not the chat window. But anyway, let me turn it over to Gwen if nobody has any questions about any of that.
Okay, aloha everybody, and thank you very much for having me today. I'm going to try sharing. Dr. G, I think you need to allow me to share my screen.
Okay. Let's see, how do I do that? New share,
I think you have to go to participants and then,
manage participants.
yeah.
Okay. Problem is, I click these buttons and then a window doesn't pop up. Let me see. Hold on. Let me try, okay, wait a minute. Manage participants. Why don't you, can you tell me what the website is while I'm
Yeah.
figuring it out so you can keep going and I can figure this how to do it?
Yeah, it's the one I put in the chat, manoa.hawaii.edu/library.
Okay. Give me a second here, .edu/library.
It's manoa.hawaii.edu/library.
Okay. Can you guys see it on the screen now? You guys able to
Nope.
see it?
Oh, now I'm.
Can you see it? No?
No, I think you might have stopped sharing your screen. There it is. Okay.
Is it obscured by the video?
No, it's okay.
Okay.
So this is what I wanted to start with. Before I launch into showing you anything else, even though the library is closed due to the coronavirus, the librarians are all still working from home, and we are answering questions, which you can send by either email or chat using the links on the website that you see here. So we're operating 7 days a week. So if you need help with your research, we are here to help you every single day of the week. And we can point out all of the electronic resources that we have, even though you can't come into the library and actually pick up books or journals or newspapers. We have quite a lot of online content that we can provide to you. Okay, so I really, if we can't figure out the screen sharing thing, I'm going to have to tell Dr. G every last little
Yeah,
thing
this is
to look.
annoying. Let me see. So I can do, if I right click on you, I have make host. Let me do that.
Maybe that would work.
Okay.
No,
So are you now, did that change anything on your end?
not yet. And it still says I'm disabled from screen sharing.
Let me see. Make co-host. I'll make, hold on. about that?
Nope, it's not working yet.
Dr. G, what if you exit the screen that you're sharing right now and it just went to our videos?
Okay, let me see.
Yeah, maybe you have to stop screen sharing. I don't know.
Yeah, let me see. Sorry, folks. I guess this is just going to take a little while to figure out. Now I got to figure out how to find the screen sharing. Okay, hold on. Let me try this. New share. This is annoying. Yeah, I don't see where it enables me to, allows me to disable share. There's just a share button. So it didn't, you're still not the host, because I'm clicking on make host, make co-host.
Yeah, no, that doesn't seem to.
Oh wait, hold on. Now it's come up. Hold on. How about now?
Looks like it's working now. Okay, yay. Okay, can you all see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so from the library homepage, if you want to find the guide that I made for today's class, you can click on research guides and then just search for journalism. And that will show you all the journalism guides that we have. Whoops. So there are a lot of them, but specifically the one for this class, we can put in 300. And I made a guide that you're sharing with Journalism 481 because there was a little bit of overlap between what I wanted to show them and what I'm showing you today. So some of the material on this guide is really oriented towards the 481 students, but hopefully some of you all will take 481 in the future and find it useful. So the first thing,
A lot of them.
What's that?
I think next semester for a lot of you guys in the fall.
Okay, so you may see me again. Anyway, so you all have an assignment about neighborhood board and coronavirus. So has anybody already started working on that assignment? Okay, so Aloha, is it? Yeah, so your mic is muted, but do you want to share any information that you've uncovered in the course of your research?
Well, I didn't like really start going that far into researching, but I picked my story idea. So I'm basically like going to be talking about how the coronavirus has cut like senior year of high schoolers a little short, and like what they're going through, and like what I know that I'm going to have to like kind of reach out to like the schools. I don't know if I'm going to get any like response.
Yeah, that could be tough to get a hold of somebody these days. Yeah. Okay, so you probably need to get a little bit of background information from the superintendent's office or from her spokesperson. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else start working on that assignment? Who would
I
like
did
to
start working on it, but like I have a plan. I don't. Does that count?
Yes.
Like I like the story I wanted to. I changed my story. It was gonna be about doctors and like just to show like how they're heroes, like, and nurses too. But I changed it to like about how all the gyms are now closing down and people who use the gym to get in their workout have to find alternatives. And then it's also difficult because we have like the law that you can't go outside and stuff like that too. And just the things they're doing to be safe while still trying to be healthy.
Okay.
So I was going to say my sister's a nurse practitioner, Elizabeth, and I actually had a long talk with her about working in an urgent care clinic right now. And my dad also, I think I told you guys, was kind of one of the leading people on infectious diseases until he retired. But I couldn't get my sister to, I thought about trying to set up a Zoom session where you all would interview her, but she's not granted permission. But if maybe at the end of this session, if anyone wants to talk about what's going on with the nurses and doctors, I learned some really interesting things from hearing my sister's perspective that you're not hearing so much on the news. So if any of you guys want to talk about that at the end of this, then just let me know.
Okay, and I was going to say, I happen to belong to the Y, and we all got a message from Michael Broderick, who's the CEO of the YMCA, saying that not only are they shut down, although they're still doing things like serving meals to kids, and they're doing childcare for first responders who are still working. But they're also offering classes online. So they have a little bit of content available by video. But he also said that the employees there are in really dire straits because the YMCA was self-insured for workers for unemployment insurance, which means that they, I guess people who work there would still be eligible for the federal unemployment, but they don't have the state unemployment. So those employees can't go to the state and apply for state unemployment. So that was kind of shocking to hear. Okay, so what kind of background information were you thinking about looking for to cover the exercise aspect?
Well, I guess I've just like thought of sources so far. I have a lot of friends who go to the gym and who are using their chairs in their dorms as like benches and stuff like that. And then I also work at the gym, so I have like sourcing with the boss of it and all that. But I should probably get like also like statistics about how important it is to work out as well too.
Right, you could get some background information about how exercise is important to reduce stress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you could also, you know, you mentioned when you were talking about how we're all supposed to stay home, but there is a big exception for exercise. So you actually are allowed to go outside, and you can even go, there's a list of activities that you're still allowed to participate in. Like you can still go surfing, for example, you can still go bicycling, you can still go walking or even hiking on the hiking trails, as long as they're not part of the state parks that are closed. So you could, another potential aspect of that would be to talk to somebody from the Department of Land and Natural Resources about
land and natural resources.
Yeah, or the city and county talking about just access to beaches when the lifeguards are not working. So that.
Sorry, what was that? That last sentence?
Okay, the last thing I said was talking to the city and county about accessing beaches even though the lifeguards are not currently working.
Oh, okay.
Isn't there
I don't know if you
controversy about that? I mean, like for a friend of mine was talking about how there was on the one hand the kind of a directive to allow people to continue to swim and use beaches, and on the other hand, we heard from Big Island that they're kind of trying to close down one of the entire coastlines. So I think there's a bit of controversy that you can follow, Elizabeth, about, you know, what Hawaii is allowing in terms of access to beaches and access to parks and how that into this.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I was out at Mokuleia yesterday, and there were tons and tons of people there. I couldn't believe how many people were going to the beach and going hiking and surfing, and I don't know what else. So
right, so that's going to be a difficult needle to thread, because on the one hand, you don't want to outlaw people in Hawaii from access to the water or the sun. You know, on the other hand, if you say go ahead and go to the beach, suddenly we have crowds of people all over the beaches and the parks, and what happened with the, if they're in the water together, do we know what that means in terms of exposure? So,
Yeah.
Another thing that all this brings up that, actually just two ideas. One is, I wonder if, Gwen, you had any ideas for her just quickly about statistics on our own gyms or our own workouts here in Hawaii. Is that something that she'd be able to find any data about? Like how many gyms we have, how many people go to the gym,
Well,
anything like that?
yeah, we might be able to find some information. I don't know if I'd have time to demonstrate that today because
Sure.
it might take a little bit of time, but I can certainly help with that on the side.
Yeah.
There's census data about different types of business enterprises, but usually it's just available at the county level. So you might be able to get, it's just for the whole city and county of Honolulu, for example, you could possibly find out how many gyms there are.
Yeah, I mean, and the other point about it is just that, we had asked, so who are you thinking of reaching out to, Elizabeth? And you guys both talked about people and all that. One of the purposes of being able to go online or use the library resources to research this stuff is also to find the names of sources and people to reach out to. So that's part and parcel of the research. And the other way around, when you do research, reach out to people and do interviews, it's really important, you're talking about people who know how to play the scales with this stuff. They kind of know the information. And so it's really important in these interviews to say to them, like, what kind of data would be really helpful in this story? What kind of data do you look at? What do you suggest for that? Who might I reach out to talk to about data? Because, I mean, just thinking back on my days as a reporter, when I would jump into a field and I was completely naive to it, I knew nothing about it, I would have to ask my sources to walk me through what kind of data is out there and available and really important in terms of that. So don't forget to do that with your own interview sources to say, how might I research this? What kind of data do I want to look at?
Yeah,
Okay.
and that brings me to a couple of search tips that I have for you. So I'm just going to tell you a few things that I use when I'm looking for statistics and data, and especially from the government. So the first one that I'm going to show you is USA.gov. USA.gov is a search engine that is just for government information. It's for federal, state, and local information. So it cuts out all of the advertising and garbage that you get when you do a Google search. And so it's a lot more of a targeted search. And they actually, of course, have a page about COVID-19. But if you wanted to find out information about COVID-19 and say, Nevada, we could search for COVID and just look for Nevada and find their webpage. So if you wanted to get some information about what they've closed down, or the page is not loading right now. I guess they have so many people trying to look at it all at the same time.
Wow. Well, everybody's, nobody can go to the library anymore. Everybody's doing research online.
Yeah. So USA.gov is certainly useful for searching for all different kinds of things. But another search tip that I have for you is doing an advanced search in Google. So if we go to Google, how many of you have already used advanced search in Google? Or no? Okay.
I use it for LTEC.
Okay. So some of you know about using advanced search, and some of you might not be so familiar with it.
I have in the past, but it became more difficult to find where it's at now.
Yeah, they've kind of hidden it. But another thing that you can do is limit your search to a specific domain. So you, for example, you can search for COVID-19 testing and type in site:/hawaii.gov. So you typing in the site : with the domain after it limits your search just to that website. And that is useful if, you know, most websites have a search box like this, but a lot of times the search boxes are running Bing or some other search engine. So if you really want to use Google to search that site, you can do that targeted search using Google.
How do you access advanced Google search? I mean, I
Well,
remember in
you
the
know, when I,
via form.
usually it's down here at the bottom, but I'm not actually seeing it.
Yeah, it's odd. They keep moving it around or hiding it. You know, what you can do instead is you can what do they call those? Like the plus signs and the
And
and using
you can Google the Google advanced search, and
there you go.
there you can find it. So another thing that you can do is restrict to a particular site or domain using this box site or domain here. So that does the same thing. If you want to restrict your search to hawaii.gov or cdc.gov or some other website, you can do that.
What are those words? What's the word for those things that you use, like either putting things in quotes or adding a asterisk
Okay.
for a wild card? What are those called?
Yeah, so you can use Boolean operators. If when I'm searching for something that's a phrase, you always want to enclose your phrase in quotation marks, like COVID-19 response. You know, that way it just searches for that phrase. So I'm just finding that phrase on the hawaii.gov website.
If you add asterisk at the end,
Yeah,
like
but that doesn't work in Google, but that in some databases, if you put an asterisk, it's a truncation symbol, so you can search for different forms of a word, like education, educated, educating. If you put educate with an asterisk at the end, then it searches for all the different forms of that word. So
does
different.
that work in Google?
I don't think so. We can try it.
It's
Yeah.
it's got to be an asterisk.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah. So I guess it does work. Okay. So yeah, you can use that.
Plus is when it has to include it, right?
Right.
Plus
Right.
sign.
And minus is supposed to take it out, but I find that that often doesn't work.
Right.
And another thing that I've learned about Google is that, you know, it follows you around and it, you know, it puts these cookies on your computer. So if you take two different people and have them do the same search, they won't get the same results.
Right.
Even if you search anonymously, you still are going to have your search results affected by your previous searches. So just bear that in mind when you're doing searching, that sometimes you might not be getting the stuff that you want on your first page of results, because Google is showing you the stuff that it thinks you want to see. And of course, if you're searching for stuff about a story that has nothing to do with your personal life, and it's getting mixed up with all the things that you searched for in your personal life, you're confusing Google and it doesn't know what to do for you. So that's a couple of searching tips. There's one other thing that I want to show you, since Dr. G mentioned trying to identify who to contact in the government. There's this guide to government in Hawaii. It's a directory that the Legislative Reference Bureau puts out every year that lists all the different head honchos in different offices. So here's the Hawaii Department of Health. That takes you to their webpage, but they also have a directory that lists individual people. Now it just lists their phone numbers. It doesn't give you their email addresses, but if you know what their name is, you can oftentimes figure out what their email address is, because for most state employees, it's their first name dot last name at hawaii.gov. So even if you can't, even if it doesn't give you a directory with an email address, it at least tells you what the person's name is. And some of these people may have their phone numbers at work forwarded to their cell phones, or they may be checking voicemail. So you might still be able to get a hold of them by phone, even if they're not in their office. So that's the guide to Hawaii government. And I'm supposed to remind everybody about I Am Vain. And
well, maybe before we ask about that, Gwen, we should take a step back for a second and say, you guys have been reading this coronavirus coverage now for a few weeks. And before we step into, what we wanted to do was, Gwen and I thought that it might be worth asking you guys to look at some of your own stories and see where you think you either could have done a better job or gone deeper by doing, by getting better data or by doing more research. And then we'll put some of those, like formulate a question about one of your stories and put that in a shared Google Doc that I've just shared with you. But before we get to that, maybe it's worth asking you all, you've been seeing several weeks of coronavirus coverage. What are some of the really big questions that you have about what's going on right now? And where do you think the press is either, there are holes in it, or there's ways that it needs to get filled in, or the press has just failed to deal with it altogether? You guys have any ideas? And what do when you go look through the news, what are some of the things that you're asking, or you feel like people around you are asking, that maybe the news either hasn't answered or is misreported and has changed? What are some?
I've been reading the Star Advertiser a lot, and then if you go through the comments, a lot of people say what they feel like is missing or what they want in the reporting. And I think one thing that they're not doing a great job of is reporting the numbers on how many people have recovered. So they just give these updates on the cases and then don't include anything on how many have recovered. So it's unclear if the numbers they're giving include people that are not, that are like now better. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good observation. I'm not as good at following the local stuff as other stuff. Any other thoughts from you guys?
I was always curious, like, well, I guess I don't know if the news, like, because scientists have to get this information, like, how are people getting it? Like, don't they want to figure out where directly they got it from? Like, did they get it from touching a can at the supermarket? Did they get it from being around someone else? So that way, like, I feel like it would ease people's mind if they knew where, like, most of it is, the cause of it is spreading.
Yeah, so like everything about the data has kind of been wrong here, right? We were told coming out of China that it was just old people. Now we're finding 40 to 50% of the cases are under, 55 or something like that. So it turns out that was totally wrong, right? About how many, young people get it. And then what do we really know about the prognosis? I mean, again, these numbers about the 1% are from China, and it sounds like that's moving as well. Like now that, maybe it's more solid now that there's been the experience of Italy. But then there's, we don't know anything, as Elizabeth is suggesting, with the testing, right? Because we don't really have, we're not up to speed yet in the United States with testing. So any numbers they're throwing out about infected or whatever can't be accurate. And then to extrapolate on how many more are really infected is, how do they know how many times more? Aloha?
Yeah, as I was like researching for like the reflection thing, to find the 3 articles to like get a story, I found like one that like recently was put up. I don't know if anyone had seen it, but it was like the University of Hawaii researchers identify a drug that may help COVID-19 patients. And I don't know, it seems like when they're writing the articles, they're not like, they're just getting stuff out to get stuff out. They're not really like elaborating on it, I'd say, and they don't go back and like try to add more stuff to it. I don't know, like I noticed like it's harder for me to like, I find something that's really good and then they talk about it briefly, but it's not like further explained, and then there's like no resources where I can like look up more of it. You know what I mean? So that's kind of
Yeah,
something.
so I
I'm having
think that,
a hard
you
time with.
know, I'm sure everybody, every one of you guys has a strong ethic about this. You really want to do your journalism ethically. And I remember from the, you know, 10 years of deadline reporting that I did, that I really felt it was essential that whatever I published, I got the story right. I didn't want to put out a, you know, what, even if my knowledge was limited, I didn't want to put out a story that ended up being completely misleading or kind of disinforming. I'd rather hedge or, you know, offer greater context and transparency than just put out inaccuracies. And I think reporters right now are having a particularly difficult time with this because all the data seems to be problematic in one way or another. There's just so much that's unknown. That's why they call it a novel coronavirus. So this is a really interesting moment for us to be having this conversation about finding the factual foundation of your stories, because it's a really challenging time to do it. And so, you know, one thing to talk about is when you don't have good data, how do you do your reporting knowing that there are problems with the data that you have? And then I'd kind of add one last thought, which is, how many of you guys are curious about what caused this in the first place? I mean, more generally, than we've heard that it came out of a wildlife market and something about bats, but what caused this, and how is this going to keep happening? If we don't, you know, if we're not clear on what caused it, how do we know that a year from now we're not going to have an even more deadly outbreak because of something that's bigger globally or whatever that's going on? And has the reporting to that really important question, have you seen any of it, and you guys have any thoughts there? Because I mean, I know a lot of you guys are really interested in environmental reporting. I mean, it just seems to be my experience with my students in Hawaii that a lot of people are very attuned to it where we are. And I had a debate with my dad because there's a lot of suggestion that a lot of what's driving this pandemic and more serious pandemics to come are a kind of a mass of environmental problems like climate change, loss of habitat, these wildlife markets, the conditions of the pig farm. I mean, if you look at, you know, it's a broader conversation, but one thing you might want to be thinking about going forward, or even now for the story you're working on now, is questioning this aspect of it. What were the causes of the coronavirus? What do we know about that? Is there a local angle to that? What do maybe local experts say about it? So anyway, I you know, that's just something to think about. But Gwen, you want to pick up from here?
Okay, so I think it sounds like you all are already pretty practiced at looking at the stories that are available and finding what's missing in them. So the difficulty is really, how do you fill in the gaps? How do you find the right person to talk to? How do you find some data or statistics to add to your story? How can you verify what you've read someplace else with a better source that is more authoritative? How can you find a source that you can actually point to as opposed to something that's just cited in an article, but they don't tell you what the source of it is? So that's what we'll talk about a little bit. But are there any in your own stories? I know a couple of you have already mentioned what types of stories related to COVID-19 you've been looking for data about, but are there any other stories that you're working on besides COVID-19 where you're having trouble finding some reliable, authoritative sources of data or statistics?
Why don't we ask you guys to do this? Do we have time, Glenda? This is sort of what we talked about as maybe an exercise, is give give y'all a few minutes to go look at your stories, your own stories. You can look at the feedback I gave you, but just take a look at your own stories and formulate one question about research. And obviously we're not going to have time to go through everybody's stuff, but if everybody could formulate one question about one of your stories, then we can look at them together. We can at least look at the questions, and we can maybe choose a couple to focus on and think about as examples. So Gwen, what do you say? Should we give them a few minutes?
Yeah, do you want to have people put those in the chat, or?
I shared with you a Google Doc. It's called, what is it called? Research on your stories. Yeah.
Okay.
So do you guys all see that? It's in the shared Google Doc. Why don't we give you all 5 minutes? Let's check it 5 minutes, okay? Let's see how everybody's doing. How are you guys doing where I'm just looking at the picture? Like Sammy, Sophia, you guys good?
Yeah, doing good.
All good.
All right, cool. So, I mean, part of this is like, what we're asking you to do is take a hard look, see if you're making any assumptions that are the foundation of your story that maybe are wrong. Like things that you're assuming are fact, but aren't fact, or just really important information that would really improve your story.
Is this for any one of our stories?
Yeah, anyone. Like your favorite question, Elizabeth. Or maybe you guys will look at it now and go, oh my God, I realized I just reported this as if it was true, and I don't even, do I know that this is true?
If I have one that I just thought of off the top of my head, can I tell Gwen, or should I just put it on the Google Doc?
Put it on for now, because
Okay.
we got sort of a, I don't know how much of it, you guys need to give me feedback, because I don't know how much of what this experience is like for you all. I mean, I've never taught an online course, but I don't want to keep you guys forever on the screen. I mean, I think this is useful, but only if we are efficient, right?
Well, I feel like, would it maybe just be easier for people to put it in the chat right now, because so we don't have to go between two documents, maybe, or put it both so we have a record of it, but like also put it in the chat. So
I hate to say it, but I can't pull up my chat.
Oh.
You should
I don't
be able
know where
to.
the hell. I've got two windows. I've got a video window and a like a kind of, I don't know what this is, a controller window, but neither of them is showing me my damn chat.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can see on my screen, you have this bar up at the top, and under the chat is hidden under more on my screen. So I don't know if it's hidden in yours too.
Okay, it's under the more thing.
Yeah, under the more ellipsis.
I put my question in both the chat and the Google Doc, so I don't know if that helps or makes it worse.
I'm sorry, y'all. I guess I'm a bit of a Luddite, which is funny because I'm teaching the multimedia class semester after semester. But show chat, I guess found it. Okay, I got it. Okay, so yeah, if you guys want to, now that I'm caught up with everyone, is anyone else having that problem about not seeing the chat? I guess not. Okay, so yeah, if you guys just want to share in the chat, that's fine. Lauren, sorry.
Totally fine.
I guess I'm not a digital native like you guys. Now I'm just seeing Lauren, and this is great. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So yeah, Kira, yours was the one that we were talking about. I think that's an excellent one. All of you guys have really interesting examples. That's kind of why I wanted to do this.
Yeah, I think I just like when I was doing my research and finding like when they put out like official statements about the new regulations, I really just couldn't find any like effects of the regulations.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and it's tricky, you know. Like Lauren is really into the aircraft one. Another one she had though was on, you know, just construction going on in Kaimulki, and it was like, you know, what if you wanted to explain what the actual business impacts of construction in Kaimulki are going to be? How the hell do you find that information? So that's again where, you know, I'm pretty good at research. I mean, you know, I ended up becoming an academic historian, and so I dig into all kinds of really interesting stuff. But I can tell you that you constantly face this challenge as a reporter, and that's another way that your interview sources are really important, is because when you reach out to these people, this is their fields, and so they know how to navigate this stuff, and they know what some of them, you know, also they know what some of the most important information is. That's interesting. Well, so did you reach out to, I'm trying to remember, I met someone who deals with the clubs, like that's his full-time job, is dealing with these UH Manoa student clubs. And I'm trying to remember his name now. He has a Hawaiian name. I think I'll think about it, but I'll think of it. But there should be people within the administration who can talk to you about what the different clubs are doing, and may be able to point you to documents about them. Because when they file RIOs, I'd imagine there are documents about each club.
Yeah, I know. I've come across a spreadsheet that was posted on a website, like the campus center website maybe, that lists all the different RIOs, and I think it might have like one sentence saying what the purpose of the RIO is, but it doesn't necessarily tell what their different activities are. And you know, some of them don't have any activities. They exist, but they don't really do anything.
Right.
Yeah, like I noticed that I was trying to look for it somewhere, like I was like searching it up, like RO, like UH clubs, like what do they offer, like trying to search it up, and I couldn't really find anything. And I was really trying to compare that, like this club is different from other ones, but I couldn't find any information to verify that it was different, you know, because there was one that I guess it's called like Nick, or no, what is it called? It's called something else, but it's like, it's similar to like community service that club does, but it's like not all like Hawaiian based community service. So I was like trying to like just kind of like
Right.
but I couldn't. So, but yeah, I think I I just wish that information was more accessible. Because I know we
Right.
had, like, I'm a part of that club, and I know that we had to do, like, paperwork and, like, you know, fill out, like, statements and stuff showing, like, what are we going to do? Like, it's all written all out. So I just wonder where they, like, keep all that information.
Yeah. Well, the spreadsheet that I saw at least gave a contact person for each organization. So if I can find it
So the
again.
guy, I know the guy. I'm about to Google the his name or who he is, but I know his first name was Kainoa. So I'm gonna do like Kainoa UH Student Services to see if I can find out who he is. Somewhere I have his business card. Yeah, I think this is. Let me see. So I don't know, Aloha, if you're actually. No, that's not it. I'll see if I can find it. Are you thinking of following up on any of that, Aloha?
I'm not too sure. Like, I already finished it, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could go back
Maybe
and
not.
fix it,
Yeah.
but like, it's not really gonna do anything
No, and I think that
now.
honestly, you've also got issues with you know, you've got all kinds of, you know, if you did want to kind of dig down deeper with some of the stories you've already done, there's so many interesting questions that you raise about the census and its impact on Native Hawaiians that, you know, there's other more probably better things to worry about. Anyway, this guy's name, I think I just found it.
Well, I'd just like to put a plug in here for the library. This is the kind of questions that you can also chat to the library and we can help you with it. If the chat's not online, like if you're working on at midnight or something, you can also email a question and it will be answered the next day. So it's not always going to be instantaneous, but you can definitely, I encourage you to ask librarians for help with these questions because your tuition dollars pay for the library, so you should use it.
Right. Good point. So, okay, let's
Okay.
see. What else?
I was going to say on the question about the Airbnb and short-term rentals, one resource that I would look at is UHERO. That's the University of Hawaii Economic Research Organization. They do a lot of research about the economic impact of a lot of different things. So I'm pretty sure they have a,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
right. They have a report called Regulating Home Share Rentals. Now this is not terribly recent, it's a couple of years old, but you should be able to find somebody to talk to at UHERO who would probably be able to answer a lot of those questions.
Right, and with business, you know, you're always, you know, that's something to always sort of keep in mind is that there are a lot of people with any industry who have a real vested interest in tracking what's going on with it. So you usually can find, I mean, like if you want to start a business, you need to sink money into it. And so whether it's, you know, Airbnbs and you want to do a bunch of them or like I know Alyssa, you know, we did stuff with photography and actually so did, you know, Liam, you did your final project on film photography too. And it's like, you know, if people want to do something like open a store that sells film photography equipment or whatever, data is really important to them because they're putting a lot of money on the line. So just any kind of business story, you know, you can pretty much bet that somebody has done some data tracking to fill people in, if only so that people can continue to do their business. And you just need to kind of find out what information they're getting and where they're getting. So this is like Gwen's shown you an excellent example of that for the Airbnb industry.
Yeah. And I don't know how much more time we have. We might need to move on. What do you think, Dr. G?
With the Airbnb?
No, just with
all these questions?
on these questions.
What else do we have? I need to look on our agenda.
There's the aircraft. Well, on our agenda, I think we have the other thing that we were going to talk about was the background information for the interviews, but that won't take very long. So
yeah,
we could probably
let's
spend a few more minutes on.
Yeah, let's do another 1 or 2 of these because we have 15 minutes left. If that's okay,
Okay.
if you guys can bear with us for another 15 minutes here, so that it's normal cost time. So maybe if we do another 1 or 2 of these.
Okay. Well, there was another question that's about aircraft crashes.
Yeah.
And the organization that handles aircraft crashes is the National Highway Transport, the National
Highway Transportation Safety Board.
Not highway. It's the
National Transportation Safety Board.
Yeah,
That's
NTSB.
right.
Yeah, sorry, I threw in highway. But.
So you can search for. So I'm just looking at the NTSB website, and they have this aviation accident database and synopses. So you can select a state like Hawaii, and you can also choose which dates you want to cover. Like it looks like it goes through March of 2020, but if you wanted to go all the way back to, say, June of 2019 to today, you can search that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a government agency for everything. Well, no, not really, not for everything, but a lot of times if you just do that Google search and limit it to .gov, that will help to point you in the right direction.
There should be, I don't see it on here, but there usually is they've had an NTSB number, but they usually, I thought they would have a tail number for planes anyway, but I don't see it. Because we used to do this, this was years ago, but we used to use their database whenever there was a crash to go look up the case, and you would do it by the tail number of the thing.
Yeah, because it is in there. I can see it in there, but it doesn't look like. No, here's the registration
number. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, for Lauren, she's looking at like a pattern of of helicopter things. So if you can use the database to narrow it down by helicopter crashes, that'd kind of get you going more.
Yeah, I think you can search by engine type, so that's one way to limit it. And it also has purpose of flight, although that drop down doesn't seem to be working. Yeah, this is operation. It's like, here's rotorcraft. So yeah, this database actually, allows you to do a lot of different types of searches, and I think it goes way back. So, okay, what else do we have? Plastic, reducing plastic. What kind of figures were you looking for about plastic? Like how much is disposed of in Hawaii annually or something like that?
Yeah, when I was talking to the department head for oceanography, they just like gave me the number, and I was like, oh, okay. So, and like, I was like having a hard time looking up that statistic because there's so much coverage on it.
Yeah. I would say they may not have it posted online, but opala.org is the organization within the city and county that handles recycling and waste disposal. So they would be the people who would have the statistics, if anybody does.
Greenpeace does an excellent job of tracking this, and they may have numbers for the state. Although I don't know when you're talking about the ocean how I don't know, that gets complicated, I guess. I mean, you can look at it from a land-based perspective, right? Or you can look at it from an ocean perspective. But once it's out in the water, it mixes with everything else, I guess.
Yeah. But I think there's also somebody who they call Dr. Beach, and that's not her name, but that's what she's known by. And she does all these beach cleanups. And she, I don't think she works in oceanography, but I'm not sure what department she's in. But she probably has some statistics. And there's also an organization called, well, they have a beach cleanup every year called Get the Drift and Bag It. And they have a lot of statistics about what's found on the coastline. And they have data that describes whether it was land-based or ocean-based garbage.
So we could kind of do a lightning round here. Let's see. People like Gwen, you could throw out ideas, or if other people have them. Airline tickets, Hawaiian, the impact of COVID-19 on Hawaii airline tickets, or on airline tickets more broadly.
Yeah, that would be the kind of question where you might look at the industry association, because they probably have some data, whatever the name of the industry association is for the commercial airline industry, would probably have the most up-to-date numbers for the whole nation.
Liam, you were on this really early, and now it might be a very different story because, of course, there's been all this, money that has gone through Congress with the stimulus or whatever. They're calling it a stimulus or they're calling it a recovery. But one of the big questions is how much money should the airlines get? And so, the airlines would have had to come armed with data about what the effects of this are going to have on their industry. So you were working on this weeks ago, but now, I mean, I'm not sure you knew who all to reach out to, but I think Gwen's right about look at the airline lobbying groups, because they would have to be armed with data in order to talk to Congress about this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Then we have a question about bees, the
Yeah.
bee project. So what is the bee project? I haven't heard
That's
of
a
it.
UH project, right?
Yeah.
So is it
They
collecting?
help just like sustain, like to make sure like the colonies in Hawaii are like separate from colonies other places, and like they help bring them to farms and stuff to help pollinate and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So you were trying to get information about how it got started?
Yeah, and it started in Argentina, and so when I couldn't get a hold of them, I just really didn't know where to go from there.
Okay. So it's an international project.
Yeah.
Yeah. That could be a tough one if they if you didn't find anything through your usual Googling.
Well, Google Scholar, do you know how to use that, Alyssa?
I do.
Okay,
Yeah.
did you try anything with that?
Well, I was trying to get a hold of like a source, and the main source was supposed to call, but they never did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But you had a lot of, I mean, one thing about Alyssa, for you as a reporter, is you come up with a lot of interesting ideas for stories that then in turn raise a lot of interesting statistical questions too. So, I mean, we've
since I didn't have the other source, so I looked up more statistics to add to the story.
Right, for the B one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then, if you look at like your cop story, you came up with 4 or 5 different ideas, all of which kind of raise interesting questions about like, well, what are the real numbers here, right? But then the last one, that's kind of, I guess, a longer conversation. We only have 5 minutes left, but just real quickly, because Sam asked such an interesting question, is she's writing about negative and positive effects of online classes and teaching. And, where would we go for that kind of thing?
Okay, for that, I would actually go to the library homepage and just do some searching in OneSearch, which is the discovery layer for what we have. So you could probably find a lot of research articles about online teaching and online learning and how people have found it to be either better or not as good as in-person teaching. But you know, a lot of people have been teaching online for a really long time. So I would actually start right here in the search box. And then once you do a search, like then you can restrict your, do you all use one search regularly? This covers a lot of the same information that you would find in Google Scholar. So you can click the online available peer-reviewed journals to restrict your search to get more authoritative sources.
Sam, did you like, one thing you can do with this is I just Googled Chronicle of Higher Education, distance learning and coronavirus. I mean, there's been reporting about this in, like, at this point in the Washington Post, the New York Times, like everybody's done their coronavirus at school stories,
Yeah.
including student journalists. So
Yeah.
one of the things with a huge kind of controversy or thing like this that's going on is to check the clips, right? And that kind of, so I would definitely check the Chronicle of Higher Ed, and I would look at the coverage that the Washington Post and the New York Times, and frankly, you know, our local papers like Civil Beat and the Star Advertiser have done on it as well. And then you want to see what kind of questions they're asking. I mean, you've got a good question on your own, but you also want to see the sources they're using to try and answer the question that you're asking. So that, but that's just part of like pro forma, what you guys want to do for check the clips, right? So you guys familiar with, does everybody know what I mean by that? Check the clips? You guys have heard me say it before, right? I mean, it's just something you regularly want to do with all your stories is look at get a good sense of the coverage that's going on. So along those lines, how are we going to leave things with them for the interview coming up, Gwen?
Oh, okay. Moving back to this guide, if you click on the Law Enforcement and Courts tab, there are some resources here for the Hawaii Innocence Project. So one thing I put is just a link to a free legal dictionary, because sometimes when you're looking at legal documents, they say things you don't know what they mean. So this can help you to find some definitions. The U.S. Department of Justice has a bunch of research reports about indigent defense. You can also just search justice.gov, which is the Justice Department website, to find more of those. There are also some National Institute of Justice, which is kind of the research branch of the Justice Department. And so they have a whole report on here about DNA exonerations that gives some good background information about that. And then there's also something that is put together by the National Conference of State Legislatures. And this is actually a really great website. The National Conference of State Legislatures publishes a lot of research reports about what's happening in all 50 states. So they have reports about marijuana laws in all 50 states. And they have this database that's forensic science laws. So it tells you what all the different laws are related to forensic evidence in all the different states.
Oh, wow.
So you can do comparisons, but you can also, of course, just find the information about Hawaii. Then there are some Supreme Court resources over here if you're interested in researching some analysis about the Supreme Court. So the ones that I liked were Washington University has a lot of different analysis articles about Supreme Court decisions and how they've been determined, which justices vote which way, which cases they hear and which cases they decline to hear, and those sorts of things. And there's also this site called Empirical SCOTUS, which is SCOTUS is Supreme Court of the United States. So this guy just does all different kinds of analysis about how the different justices behave and how each court, each term stacks up against what's been done previously. So that can be some good background information about the Supreme Court in general.
And I am scrambling right now to send you guys all an email that the subject is just let me know who you want to interview next week and possible topics. And so, as I said, for Kenneth Lawson, we talked about Gwen's suggestions were looking at, how do we want to put this, Gwen? Resources for public defenders in Hawaii?
Yeah.
Is that correct, or?
Yeah, indigent defense is the kind of legal term that they use for public defenders.
Sure.
So that was the term that I found to be the most fruitful.
Okay. So you guys could do it on that. What about rape kits?
Yeah, so rape kits, there are a couple of different ways to look at that. Would be to look at what laws are pending in the legislature, because I think the way it hangs in our state, they passed a law in the legislature to require inventories of all the rape kits, but I don't think they passed a law requiring that they actually test all of them, because I think they didn't allocate funding for testing all of them. So you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's how it is. So I'm not even sure if they finished the inventory of them yet. If they even know how many rape kits there are that aren't tested yet.
Yeah, okay, so what laws are pending in the legislature? What is the status of rape kits in the state? And what are HIP's chief concerns? And then what is this called? What are they called?
Sorry, I have another class.
Okay. So I'll send this email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll see you guys next week, but I'll look for this email. Okay.
Okay, yeah, and if you have follow-up questions, I'm always available, as are all the librarians. We're happy to help.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys soon. All right.
Yeah.
Bye. Gwen, you still there?
Yes.
Okay, so let's see. What is the, so I have indigent defense resources for public defenders, for public defense, I should say, in Hawaii. Rape kits, what are the laws pending in the legislature? What is the status of the rape? I guess I can figure out the rest of this on my own. You'd sort of suggested the question of, well, no, I guess it was Andrew Freeman suggested the question about, suspending constitutional rights.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thanks. They're a little bit quiet on Zoom, it seems like.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a pretty strong group of students as they go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think on Zoom, you kind of have to check in with each student sometimes, because some of them just won't say anything at all. I'm teaching a class that's on Zoom too, and yes, some of them are very practiced at using Zoom, but some of them are not.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of trying to do that. I don't know how successful it was, but I find this interface gets very confusing. Is this like a Microsoft program?
I don't think so, but I can see why you'd say that.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't know if you had this experience, but it's giving me these different unconnected windows to work with. Yeah.
Well, I think you can display things in different ways. So, like if you want to make the video appear differently, or you can hide the video panel. So, I think it just takes a little bit of time to learn what all the different controls are. Because your screen can get very messy, so you usually end up minimizing everything just to keep the clutter down. But it also really helps to have a large monitor. Like I have a pretty large monitor that I use
Well, yeah, I think I was telling you, I just bought a second monitor actually,
Yeah.
so I could
Yeah.
move things around, and if not, this would have been an even bigger nightmare. But
Yeah.
I don't even know how I managed to then get it to show me the chat option. I now finally have an interface where I've got, the screen share, I've got the video up there with you, and I've got the chat. But
Mm-hmm.
when I create a new meeting, everything's in disconnected boxes.
Oh, I think if you go under the settings, you can actually set up defaults.
Okay.
So if you want it to look a particular way every time you log in, you can set that up in the settings.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Preferences. Yeah. Okay. I'll have to try and mess with that so I can get it right.
Yeah, yeah, you have to just spend some time fiddling with it to make sure you know how to do everything.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. That was really helpful.
I hope so. Yeah, they a lot of them really seemed like they had some pretty good ideas about what they needed to know. They just didn't know where to find it. So
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, an ongoing project for us.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a
Okay.
lot.
All right, you're welcome. Let me know if you need anything else.
Will do. Take care.
Okay, thanks. Right, bye.